I taught her how to hold a room. I didn't teach her how to hollow one out. That part, she figured out on her own. Her name was Bryn. She was 29 when I hired her. She was 35 when I stood in front of 40 of our colleagues, plugged a drive into a projector, and walked 6 years of her lies across the wall behind her while she watched from the front row. I did not raise my voice. I did not say her name once. When I was done, I closed my laptop, said thank you for your time, and left through the door I'd come in through. This is how she earned that afternoon. 6 years before that presentation, I was sitting in my office on a Tuesday afternoon with a stack of resumes and a lukewarm coffee. Hiring is one of the least glamorous parts of running a design team. Most of what you read is polish. You are looking for the one thing under the polish that isn't polished, the one line that gives away that the person who wrote it actually knows what a building is for. Her resume had a line about a public library she'd worked on during her master's program. She'd written that she'd added a covered outdoor reading area on the north side of the building because the librarian had told her the teenagers wouldn't come inside. That was the line. Any architect can design a library. Not every architect thinks to ask why the kids won't walk through the door. Her name was Bryn Callahan. She was 29, no pedigree, no connections, 3 years out of a state school program. I brought her in on Thursday. I offered her the associate position on Monday. She started 2 weeks after that. For 6 years, I built her. I taught her how to read a client during a pitch, which shoulder they lean into when they're interested, which pen they pick up when they're about to say no. I taught her which partners at the firm you never contradicted in a meeting and which ones expected you to. I taught her how to walk a job site so the foreman would take you seriously without you ever having to raise your voice. I introduced her to every principle I knew. I put her on projects I could have kept for myself. I gave her credit on shared work when I could have swallowed it. I did all of this because someone had done it for me, once, when I was 29 and didn't know what I didn't know. That woman's name was Diane Ashworth. She retired to Vermont 11 years ago. I still send her a card at Christmas. When I promoted Bryn to senior associate at the 4-year mark, I sent Diane a photograph of the two of us at the celebration dinner. Diane wrote back that Bryn had a smart face. I wrote back that she reminded me of me. That was the first mistake. The second was assuming she saw the same thing. The first thing that didn't sit right, I talked myself out of inside an hour. It was a groundbreaking for a mixed-use project on the east side. October, cold morning, ceremonial shovels, the usual. The client's development director, a woman named Priya, whom I'd worked with for 8 years, pulled me aside near the coffee table and said she was glad to see me because Bryn had mentioned I'd been out sick that week. I hadn't been out sick. I'd taken a personal day on Wednesday to drive my mother to a specialist appointment. I told Priya I was fine, that Bryn must have gotten her weeks confused. Priya said, of course, and we moved on. On the drive back to the office, I thought about it for maybe 12 minutes, then I put it down. The second thing was a pitch deck. A client we were courting for a hotel renovation had asked for a proposal. I'd built the deck, Bryn had cleaned it up, my assistant had sent it out. 3 days later, the client wrote back and thanked Bryn for the thoughtful approach. In the version that had gone out, the project lead slide listed Bryn's name above mine, in a larger font. When I asked her about it, Bryn showed me a screen recording of the file she'd sent to my assistant. In her version, my name was on top. Somewhere between her outbox and the client's inbox, the file had changed. My assistant swore she hadn't touched it. I made her redo the slide. I sent the corrected deck. I told myself, software does strange things. The third thing was a dinner invitation. Our managing partner hosted a small dinner every October for what he called the next generation, a rotating list of senior associates and design directors he wanted the firm's clients to know by name. I'd been to it 11 years running. That October, I wasn't invited. Bryn was. When I mentioned it in passing, the managing partner apologized and said he'd assumed I was traveling. I hadn't been traveling. Bryn, when I asked her, said she'd assumed I'd been invited first and had declined. She was sorry. She looked sorry. I let that one go too. The fourth thing was a concept. At a firm retreat in the Berkshires the previous spring, I'd sketched an idea on a cocktail napkin about how you might design a hospital wing so the pediatric ward faced a courtyard the sick children could see even from bed. It was the kind of half idea you have with a glass of wine in your hand and a fire going. Bryn had been at the table. She'd asked me about it. I'd let her keep the napkin. 6 months later, she pitched the idea verbatim to a client of mine who'd been asking about hospital work. The client came to me afterward and said, "Bryn had been brilliant." I said, "Yes, she was very talented," and I did not say the rest of what I was thinking. The fifth thing was the one I could not put down. It was a Tuesday in March, around 8:30 at night. I'd left the office at 6 and gotten halfway home before I remembered my laptop was still on my desk. I turned around. The lobby was empty. The elevator was empty. 23rd floor was empty except for one light in the small glass conference room at the end of the corridor. Bryn was on a phone call. She didn't hear me. I stopped in the hallway 10 feet short of the doorway because I recognized the tone in her voice, the one I'd taught her, the pitch your value tone. She was talking to a headhunter. She said she was ready to lead her own studio. She said she'd been carrying the senior design work at our firm for 2 years. She said the woman who'd hired her, she used my name, was burned out, coasting, past her prime. She said the partners had been talking about a transition. She used the word transition the way you use it when you mean replacement. I did not walk into the room. I did not clear my throat. I stood in the dark hallway with my coat over my arm until the call ended, and Bryn packed up her bag and left through the other door. Then I got my laptop. Then I went home. Then I sat at my kitchen counter with the lights off for 2 hours. I did not sleep that night. Here is what I did not do. I did not confront her. I did not call the managing partner. I did not go to HR. I did not write an angry email that I saved to drafts and reread the next morning. I did not tell my husband, not that week, not for the next 6. I did what I do best. I opened a file. 6 years of Bryn Callahan's work at our firm existed on our servers. 6 years of email chains. 6 years of version histories on every drawing. 6 years of calendar invites, phone logs, expense reports, and internal case study drafts. I had access to all of it. I had built most of it. I started at the beginning and I read every line. It took me 6 weeks, nights, weekends, one long stretch over a President's Day holiday when my husband thought I was working on a proposal. In a sense, I was. What I found was a pattern too clean to be accidental. The pitch deck with the swapped names had happened 4 times on 4 different projects over 3 years. Each time, the client had responded to Bryn instead of to me. Each time, Bryn had corrected it in a follow-up. Each time, the correction had gone to the client, but the initial impression, that Bryn had led the work, had already landed. The napkin idea from the Berkshires was one of 6 concepts of mine that had shown up, months later, in Bryn's pitches to my clients. She'd been careful. She'd never done it with something I'd put in writing, only with the things I'd said out loud, in her presence, when neither of us had a pen. The internal case studies were the worst of it. Every firm keeps a library of past projects for use in future pitches. 1-page summaries with the client, the scope, the design lead, the outcome. Somewhere in year 3, someone with editing access had begun revising the case studies for projects I had led. My name had been moved from design lead to design supervisor. Bryn's name had been added on several of them as co-lead. The edits were small, the kind of thing no one notices unless they're building a promotion packet for a partner review. The edits had been made from Bryn's login. The timestamps were between 11 at night and 1 in the morning. And then, in week 5, I found the NDA. A rival firm across the river had recruited 3 of our project managers in the previous 2 years. Not enough to look like a raid, enough to hurt. Our managing partner had grumbled about it. Nobody had made much of it. Bryn had signed an NDA with that rival firm 11 months earlier. I found it because she had, once, uploaded a personal PDF to her firm cloud folder by mistake and deleted it within the hour. Our servers keep deleted files for 30 days. She'd been past the 30 days on everything else, not on that one. The dates lined up with 3 concept packages that had leaked from projects on my roster. I sat with that for a night. Then I built the file. Not a screed, not an email, a presentation. I built it the way I would have built it for a client. Cover slide, executive summary, 6 sections, each with a thesis, evidence, and a documented source. Timestamps, screenshots, email headers, metadata exports, a cross-referenced timeline, an appendix. I spent 6 years building her career. It seemed only fair I build her a stage. Our firm holds a leadership showcase every May. It runs a full afternoon in a rented event space downtown. 40 senior staff present. All the partners attend. Select clients are invited to the reception afterward. It is the closest thing our profession has to a graduation. Bryn was scheduled to present her signature portfolio in the second-to-last slot of the day. 30 minutes on the projects she considered career-defining. Every senior associate gets one of these presentations at the 7-year mark. I'd suggested her name for the slot 4 months earlier. Nobody had questioned it. Weeks before the showcase, I'd sent a note to the event chair asking if I could open the Q&A after Bryn's presentation. As her mentor. As a gesture. The chair had written back that of course I could, that it would be lovely. I don't remember what I ate for breakfast that morning. I remember I wore a navy suit. I remember it was raining. I remember the elevator to the event floor was slow. Bryn's presentation was excellent. She'd worked on it for months. She walked the room through 4 projects, and she used the word "my" 23 times. I counted. When she reached the last slide, the room applauded. She stepped back from the podium and looked out at the partners in the front row, and she was, for a moment, exactly what I had trained her to be. Then the event chair invited me to open the Q&A. I did not go to the microphone. I went to the projector cart at the side of the stage. I unplugged the HDMI from her laptop and plugged it into a drive I'd brought with me. The first slide came up. It said, "Authorship Review, 6 projects, 6 years." I heard someone in the front row cough. I walked the room through it the way I would have walked a client through a design proposal. Slow, measured, unhurried. I did not raise my voice. I did not editorialize. For each of the 4 projects Bryn had just claimed, I showed the concept origin, the email, the sketch, the calendar invite, and I showed where her name entered the timeline. I showed the case study edits side by side with the originals, with the login history overlaid. I showed the NDA. I showed the leaked concepts and their dates. Halfway through, Bryn tried to interject. She said this was inappropriate. She said this wasn't the venue. She said we could discuss this after. I did not look up from my notes. I said, "You've had 6 years to tell your version. Give the room 15 minutes with mine." Nobody in the front row moved. The managing partner had his phone out. 2 other partners had leaned forward with their elbows on their knees. A senior associate 2 rows back was crying, which I did not understand at the time and only understood later. I finished the last slide. I closed my laptop. I said, "Thank you for your time." I walked out through the door I'd come in through. In the hallway outside the event space, my hands were shaking so badly I couldn't get the elevator button to register. It took me 3 tries. I took a car home. I did not check my phone until the next morning. When I did, I had 97 messages. I want to tell you, Bryn was fired that afternoon. She wasn't. She resigned 2 weeks later after the partners had done their own review and confirmed what I had shown them. The firm did not press charges over the NDA. Litigation would have been expensive and public, and our managing partner is a practical man. The concept leaks would have been hard to prove in court. The case study edits were internal. The NDA was a civil matter. Nothing about it was clean. Bryn took a position at a firm in another city within 4 months. I know because a former colleague sent me the announcement. Some firms will always have a use for someone who plays that way. That is the part of this story that is not satisfying, and I am not going to lie to you about it. Our firm offered me a promotion inside the week. I turned it down. A smaller studio across town had been asking me for 2 years to come over as a founding partner, and I finally called them back. I started there on a Monday in July. I brought 2 people with me. Neither of them was Bryn. I still send Diane Ashworth a card at Christmas. Last year, I told her the whole story. She wrote back on a piece of graph paper in pencil, 4 sentences long. She said, "Some of them turn out to be you. Some of them turn out to be the opposite of you. You cannot always tell at 29. Keep hiring anyway." I hung it above my desk. When someone asks me now what I look for in a new hire, my answer is shorter than it used to be. I look for the one line under the polish that gives away what the person actually cares about, and I look at the way they talk about the person who taught them. I don't know if Bryn learned anything. I know I did.